Second. There you go. So today it's the live with. I'm going to give you, we're going to cover one topic, and then it's going to be an open forum. Basically, you guys can ask all the questions you want in the questions panel, and I will do my best to answer them. If there's a question that does not get answered or would consume too much time, I do make note of those, and those will usually be included in a future broadcast or a future webinar. So if you do have questions and they don't get answered, don't be frustrated. I will find a way to make sure that your question gets answered. So those of you that are new here who have not been to one of these, my name is Ryan Wunderlich. I have over 39 years of experience in AutoCAD across multiple industry segments. I'm currently the support team manager here at ImagineIt for the AEC team in our Solution Center. I've taught AutoCAD as a certified instructor. I've got over 15 years in CAD management, 8 years in cruise ship building, 5 years in civil survey landscape architecture. I've worked in mechanical design, electromechanical, printed circuit board and schematics, architectural acoustic, as well as doing equipment layout in industrial spaces. As I usually like to tell people, I've done everything but aerospace and automotive. So if you have a question specific to your industry, chances are I've done something in that industry and can probably give you my best take. And I have a bachelor's in business management and a master's in organizational management. So we only have two things on the agenda. First one is quite a hot topic, converting imperial to metric and metric to imperial, and some of the things that happen when you bring in, a millimeter drawing into your inches drawing, or you bring an inches drawing into your millimeter drawing, and some of the crazy things that go on, and we're going to cover that. And then we'll go immediately after that into the live Q&A where you can ask all the questions you want. And again, I will do my best to answer those questions as I can. So getting started, converting imperial to metric or metric to imperial. So this is going to be a general overview of the process. Right, things to keep in mind. The INS units or insertion unit tells AutoCAD what to see the drawing as well as how to scale incoming drawings. What happens when styles are of the same name versus a different name, and why things go bad when you explode inserted content. Things that don't convert as you think. So text heights remain the same and are converted to the current measurement scale. There's some other things where your dimensions get gigantic, and I'll explain why that occurs. That's under the pitfalls and the overall recommended practices. I've done a lot of work going from imperial to metric and metric to imperial in my life. So this, again, will be a general overview. These are the things to keep in mind. So first things first is starting with the INS units, either by the command line or by the units command. You go to units here and you set your insertion scale here. This is important for AutoCAD to read. All right, Robert, we will get back to you. Understand with tables, we'll get back to you in the Q&A section, but thank you for putting that in there. So it's important to set your INS units for AutoCAD to read the file properly. And what I mean by that is if you set your drawing to inches, when you come in to insert it, it will tell you what that block unit is, whether it's unitless, millimeters, inches, centimeters, etc. That's going to be your first visual clue if you use the classic insert or if you are bringing in XREFs that will tell you if that drawing is going to be scaled correctly or incorrectly. So unitless always scales at 1:1 regardless of what it may actually be measuring in the drawing. So if you have a drawing that comes in at unitless, that means no scaling factor will ever be applied to it, and it will just assume that whatever drawing you're bringing it into is the same units that it is. If you are set to the conversion, typically millimeters to inches is 1 divided by 25.4, which is 0.03937787.874. And inches to millimeters is the scale factor 25.4, which is 25.4 divided by 1. The classic insert and the XREF insertion dialog boxes will both show this conversion factor. Be aware that the block palette will not show you what you're bringing in. So this is one time where classic insert works very well for this to give you an idea of what it's going to scale as when you bring it in. So if I'm in a drawing that is scaled to inches, and I'm bringing in a metric drawing that is set to millimeters, you will see it will automatically apply that scale factor when I insert this. Or, again, same thing, block unit here, millimeters, block unit, unitless. So Now that we know that there's a scale factor applied, let's talk about some of the other things. So styles of the same name will be converted to what's in the existing drawing. This is text styles, dimension styles, and multi-leader styles, which means if you have a style named standard in your metric drawing and you insert it into a style that into a drawing that also has standard in it in your drawing, when you explode that block, it will immediately apply the existing drawing's measurement or the standard style to whatever you've brought in. And be mindful that textiles will be using the current drawing if the name is the same, but the actual text height of the elements will reflect the converted values. This will be the same for multi-line or multi-leader text, single or multi-line text. Dimension text does update properly, provided you're not using a fixed height in the text style. What I mean by that is if you have standard text or dim text that you use as a text style that has a fixed height associated to it instead of a height of 0, when you bring it in, it will not convert correctly. And you will need to select the text and convert to the correct size if it is not appropriate. So in this particular case, my 3mm text size is approximately an eighth, which means when I bring that drawing in, it will convert it to 0.1181, which is really close to 0.125, which is 1/8, but it's not exact. So you may need to change those heights or that little variance may be fine. So styles with different name keep their settings and are imported without converting the units. This is why dimensions and dimension appearance are always incorrect after exploding, why dimensions get gigantic or get really minuscule, right? This is why text styles will either have very huge or very small values. So 3mm text becomes 3 inches tall after inserting. So again, these are when styles are of a different name. So if you have a style named metric for your dimension style and you do not have metric in your imperial drawing, when you explode that block, it's going to be 25.4 times the size it should be, because it's going to essentially bring it all in and it will read 3 units here as 3 inches. And what you see here is this is when I brought in, this is the style of metric, and it's got 3.75 millimeters. When I explode this inside of my drawing, after I brought it in, it's now 3.75 inches. And it's 1.25 inches as opposed to 1.25 millimeters. When I bring a text style in, it will convert this text style from 3 millimeters to 3 inches. That's really where the problem becomes. So these are some of the pitfalls. Never assume that a drawing has been set up correctly for units. Always check that before inserting. And again, items inserted will be correctly scaled and will not change appearance until they are exploded. One of the things is some verticals, especially Civil 3D, may not translate Civil 3D specific data well, anything that's state plane or coordinate system specific, so please be aware of that. If something isn't inserting correctly, always check your settings first. If something scales incorrectly, double check the unit settings, both on your drawing and the drawing you're bringing in, to make sure that those things make sense and line up. And when things go bad or don't behave as expected, so you have items that didn't have the same name, so styles are now added with the incorrect unconverted values. If you don't have insertion units or INS units set correctly for the inserted file and the file you are inserting into, those are the two things that usually cause the most problems. Now, you can always grab the incorrect, that's misspelled. Anyways, you can always grab the incorrect styles information and apply a known style that is correct and purge the styles over that are not correct. And then you'll have to spend some time renaming styles to match the destination drawing styles in the drawing to be inserted and purging as much unused data as possible before inserting. That makes this process a lot easier. So understanding where you're going from and what you're getting to, those things will make a huge difference in getting there. Now, here's another one. You can use the -DWG units to convert an existing drawing to a new measurement system. So it can scale the existing data in the drawing to the new units. it will apply that scale value to all the items in that drawing before bringing it in. This includes styles. So when I convert a metric drawing to imperial, it will take this baseline spacing at 3.75 and will run the conversion to 0.14 decimal. 0.125 becomes 0.0492, etc. So if you have a metric drawing that you are converting to imperial inches or vice versa, make sure that those drawings are set up, and then you could run this before inserting it, so that will help make sure that the changes are not significant. And I have a good example to show you of some of these. Okay, so in my example here, so I have just a basic drawing, and I have basic standard styles set right here, and I've not done anything with those standard styles except leave them as is. So I'm going to show you, this is the block I'm going to bring in. You'll see that this is set to fractional inches, and it has the millimeters as secondary dimensions on the end. I also have a metric block with dimensions, also with the same information, where I'm showing the millimeters, and in here I'm showing the fractional inches. And then I have a second metric one where I'm calling these styles metric. So these are not called standards. So this metric one is set with standard. This imperial one is also set with standard. This one is set with metric. So I've gone through and done some renaming, and I'm going to show you what happens when we bring these in all into a basic drawing. So again, I'm going to go, first thing I'm going to do is, whoop, that's not what I meant to check. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go check my units. And I'm going to see that this is a decimal set to inches, which is fine. I just want to show that this is set to inches, which means when I go to Classic Insert, and I go select one of those drawings, right? We'll do the imperial. You're going to see that it tells me that the block unit of this imperial drawing is also in inches, which means there will be a scale factor of 1. I'll bring it in, and we're here. And I can do the same thing again. Now I will bring the other one in as an XREF first. So I'm going to bring this in as an XREF, and I'm going to grab that metric one. And you're going to see it tells me that this metric one, because it was set up correctly, is in millimeters and will automatically do my conversion for me. So when I bring that one in, it should overlay right on the top. Right, and you'll see that this is different from this, etc. So now when we get into this, we're going to go ahead and bind this. And I'm just going to do a plain old insert. And now you're going to see that both of these are blocks in here. Now watch what happens when I explode this one. I explode that one, and this now inherits this dimension style standard, and my text all picked up that dimension style standard. And I can do the same with this one. I can explode this one, and you'll see that all of these things convert back to what's in here because, again, all my names matched. So multi-leader matched, and this is where things get a little dicey. So when I look at this, I see that my text height here is 0.18 for this multi-leader. This multi-leader, which was the metric equivalent, is actually 0.1575. This is my 1/8 inch text height. And over here in properties, you're going to see that it is 0.125. This is that 3 millimeter text height, and it remained 3 millimeters converted, which is 0.1181. So those are the little bit of pitfalls that you get when you do this. Now let's see what happens when we do the classic insert and we bring in one that has styles of different names. I'm going to bring this one in. And again, this sees millimeters. It comes in this way. And it should be right here. Because this is the, right, they're bringing the wrong one. Oh, that's the correct one. And now when I explode this, this is what you get. This is the behavior that everyone complains about when they explode metric blocks. And now I want to show you why. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in this metric style, or actually let's come and we're going to start with dimension styles because this is the one that usually outlines it. So this is the metric style. And when I go to modify this, you're going to see that it brought all of these pieces in exactly as they were done in the drawing. So it did no conversion when I exploded this. It just simply brought this in, and now this is 3.75 inches instead of 3.75 millimeters. That's the pitfall. That's why things don't come in right. That's why things go badly when you explode a block that's incorrectly unitized, for lack of a better term. Those are the things that cause the problems. So let's come back here and let's fix this. So let's undo this. Now we're going to go in here and we're going to do something different. So this is where I'm going to use that minus DWG units. And it's going to tell me that I'm currently set to 3, which is millimeters. I'm going to reset this to 1. And I'm going to leave it as, and I'll bring it to architectural format. And I will go ahead and accept the default of 1/16 of an inch. Scale objects inserted from other drawings upon insert? Yes. Do I want to match the insertion units to scale this? Yes. And do I want to scale the objects in the current drawing to reflect the change in units? Yes. And include objects in paper space? Honestly, when you're inserting blocks, you're never going to see the paper space stuff anyway, so usually I say no here. And now it is rescaled this as inches. So this now shows us 10 inches and 0 millimeters. Or actually it shows us 10 millimeters and 0 inches. But if we actually look at our dimension style now, you will see that this metric has made all of those changes here and here and here and has altered all of my styles properly. You'll actually see that as well here, where my metric style now is showing at 1/8, because that's the closest rounding of 1/16 from where it was. So now when I save this and I come back into this drawing and I reinsert this, what you're going to see here is when I browse out to here and I go grab this one I just saved, and you'll see that it's inches and 1-to-1 scaling, and I bring it in, and here it is. And now when I explode it, it will maintain all of the same pieces. Now, I have to go back through and make some changes, right? So this metric one is actually not that one. The metric one, modify. You're going to see that my primary units are decimal, but this is where I would probably have to come back in and change this to fractional. 1/16 of an inch. And then my alternate units are now going to be decimal, and instead of the multiplier being this small, to where I point 0, this is where I would modify this at 25.4 to give me the correct scale in millimeters. I hit OK, I hit close, and now these have updated correctly. So any questions regarding imperial to metric, metric to imperial? I kind of showed you the pitfalls. Those are the big ones. Those are how we get things to come in a lot easier. Is either making sure my styles are all the same name, making sure that the drawings are all set to the correct unit so it automatically scales on insert. And if I can't get there from here, or I can't change enough styles to match what I have, I use the minus DWG units to convert the whole thing. And then I will come back in and make those couple of quick modifications. Easy peasy, I'm done. Ask your questions, but any questions regarding imperial to metric, metric to imperial? This has been a long-standing issue that people have had. There's never been a good way to explain it. It's taken me about 1.5 to 2 years to have drawings and have some data that I can actually show you all of the pitfalls and how these things work. And again, these are the basics. If something's not coming in right, again, check the units of both the incoming drawing and the drawing you're in. Make sure that those are set correctly. Check your styles. Those are the big ones. If the styles are different names, it's just going to bring in that raw style. append it, and it's not going to make any scale modifications if you don't do that. Yeah, Paul, hang on. We'll talk about that one in just a sec. So those are the things that we can do. All right, come back here. All right, with no other questions regarding imperial to metric to imperial, now we're going to go into the live Q&A. So this is your chance to ask anything I've not covered in this year or in past webinars. Or if you've not seen a past webinar and you still have a question, you can ask any questions related to AutoCAD-based software, primarily AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT, but I can answer some of the other ones, especially with like Civil 3D, Map 3D, things like that. I will try and answer them in the order they appear in the Q&A box. If I cannot answer a question or it would consume too much time to go through, please know we do value your input and I will make sure to include any topic like that in a future webinar. It may not be immediately, so it may not be our next webinar, which is in October, but it will be in a future webinar. So let's go back. Robert, it says, I have a lot of difficulty working with tables in AutoCAD. I seem to have a lot of trouble copying rows or text from rows to other rows. Can you quickly create a table, add some text, and do some copying and editing of that text? Okay, well, AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT both essentially use the same engine. So we're just going to drag this over here, and I'm just going to make a quick table here. All right, so let's put some text in here. So this is going to be 1, 2, 4, 7, right? And I'm going to come in here and do A, B, C, D. Right? So you want to copy text from one row to another row. So I can just simply highlight this cell without double clicking it. Just highlight the cell, hit Control C, or here hit Control V and copy and paste from one cell to the other. If I want to grab this row, I hold down the Shift key, or if I want to grab these 4, I'll grab the first one, I'll hit the Shift key, I'll grab the other box, copy, select here, paste. Now it only pasted that individual cell, so I actually have to match the same areas. So just be aware you can do that. Right? I can also use my window right here. Right? So if I go from here to here, I can do X for cut. I can come in here, I can paste. So all of these things just use your basic Control C, Control V, Control X. That's how I do this. That's how I've done it. If I need to insert a row for a table, I just click the row and I can insert a column, or insert a column left. I can just click on a row, and basically how you get here is you click on a single cell. That will give you your standard Excel columns and rows that you're used to. Just come over here, click on the row itself, right mouse click, and I can insert a row below. I can grab with the Shift key, I can grab multiples and insert rows below, and however many I grabbed up here is however many it's going to grab here. I can grab this one cell, and I can shift out to here, and I can go Control V, and I can replace everything. I hope that was a good demo, Robert, on how we can do this, and it should be exactly the same in AutoCAD LT. All right, Mark, you have issues opening drawings. I can see the preview. When I try to open it, I get a window that says drawing file is not valid. All right, there could be a couple of things going on. The first thing is you have to understand that there is a hard limitation in Windows for how long the file path can be, including the drawing name and extension. And if you have special characters, my question is if you take that drawing file and you move it closer to the root, or you move it to, like C:\Autodesk, will the file open then? If it does, then there's something wrong with the path you're trying to get to. If it keeps coming back and telling you drawing file is not valid, that usually means that there's a corruption. So What he's talking about is here. Let's go to here. So here's my webinars right here. So you'll see that I have my drawings here. What I can do is I can make a copy of this, just right mouse click on it and go to copy. I'll go to C Autodesk. This is everyone or most everyone should have this folder. This is a great place to dump things for testing. Paste the file here. Now can I open the file from here? The other things that can cause drawing file not valid is if you have, depending on how your network is set up, it could be a server issue, it could be a connectivity issue, it could be a permissions issue. That's more of we'd actually have to see what's going on. So that would be more of a support, but do understand, and I actually have a previous webinar for that. So hang on. Let me go find that one real quick. Sorry, I got to move this over here. Standards, marketing. Nope, that's right. So when we start talking about standardization, or we start talking about these things, I did one on mastering Civil 3D workflows standardization. So file directory structure and file naming. First place is to start with a cohesive and easy to follow naming directory structure. Windows has a hard limit. This includes all of the characters, spaces, symbols, the file name, and the extension. Keeping your path names minimal will help prevent issues from occurring. One of the common ones is drawing file is not valid because it can't read out that far. Some Autodesk applications will have issues with XREFs, especially images and PDFs that are 1/2 that length, around 127 characters in length. So those are the things you have to be careful of. Oh, your files are on a jump drive. An EDU license, that should not be an issue. It's something specific either to your jump drive or something specific to the drawing. If the drawing did not get copied over correctly, that bitmap that you see, which is a preview, is actually a stored image in the DWG header. So your DWG file is made up of a snapshot of that image and other data. You may still see the image. The actual drawing could still be corrupt or broken or incomplete. So those are all the things that can cause that if those files are on a jump drive. But that's a very good question. All right, so let's go. All right, so Karen, I will get to you in just a second. Paul, what is the best process to bring in architecture drawing to civil drawing? That is the $1,000,000 question. Because your architect drawings are always coming in thinking that they're inches when they're actually feet. And when you bring it into civil, it's always scaled up by a factor of 12. I've not been able to figure that one out other than changing your INS units to inches, which I generally don't recommend in a civil 3D scenario unless you need to go back and you can change it, bring in your thing, and then change it back. But it's reading your architecture files or the architecture stuff as inches when it's actually feet. And that's a civil 3D specific thing. So it scales it always either up or down by a factor of 12. So usually you bring it in and have to scale it up or down. That's the best way I've found to work with it. All right. Large my pointers, files are on a jump drive. All right, Karen. So what about imperial and metric tolerances? When we do dual dimensions, sometimes we have a tolerance that is a value of 0. The plus or minus symbol does not appear. To get around this, we add a number beyond the visible decimal place to fool it into appearing like that, but set to 3 decimal places. Let's make that a little bigger. Would setting, to get around this, yep. Would setting the DWG units like you previously showed fix this, or is that another issue? The minus DWG units may actually fix that because, again, it's going to take a fraction of that. AutoCAD is actually, normally we can display up to 9 decimal places in AutoCAD, but AutoCAD, from what I remember correctly from past years, is mathematically correct to at least 14 decimal places, and I think that that number is actually increased. So as long as there's that little smidge of decimal and it's not a perfect 0 out to the maximum number of decimal places, it should still read it the way you think. Keep them coming. You guys have a lot of good questions. All right, Robert, I will write down a future presentation on table manipulation and how we do that so that we have some of that. Right, and I can go through and talk about how we go into our tables and actually make modifications and how we can set things to be a certain way if we want colors to be a certain way, things like that, because we can always modify our table standard here. So we can change what the table styles look like. So we can change the fill color if we want to fill things. We can change borders, so we can change line weights, colors. If we want this to be by layer, by block, we can change all of that here in the table styles. So, and that might be a very good webinar, is to talk about how we set up table styles and then turn around and talk about how we edit information in there. So, good suggestion. All right, and Darren, I know what you guys are working in. So these are generic AutoCAD tables. Civil 3D has a completely different set of tables for like line arc or line curve tables, alignment tables, things like that. We can definitely set something up so that you can understand how we modify those. Those are all based off of styles. And that's a Civil 3D specific thing. But if you're looking for just basic AutoCAD tables, we can absolutely do that. Say thanks everyone. Okay, well, working with GPS shape files. Once I import them into a drawing, is there any way to keep the original GPS points? But yes, there is a way we can probably keep that GPS data. My guess is instead of doing, I'm assuming you're just importing the raw shape file through map import. Have you thought about going through the map task pane to connect to the shape file in order to maintain your GPS data in there? That would bring it in as a layer that you can manipulate the layer and either put information back in the GPS file or pull stuff out of the shape file and make it raw data in yours. That would probably be that was my initial thought based on your question. That might be something a little more detailed, and if you have some good examples, that's something we could definitely put in front of the civil team who does the civil webinars, and maybe they could cover something like that. But I think that's probably what you'd be doing in order to keep the original GPS. And next webinar, oops, is October 17th, 25. Any questions, any ideas on other topics, go ahead and send those to Lori. That's lelliott@rand.com.
With that, everybody, have yourself a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you all in October. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, guys.